Treasure Talk. It's HPP Treasure Talk. It's HPP Treasure Talk.
HPP Treasure Talk is a webcast created by Shay Irvin, the author of his Purple Peculiar Treasure trilogy. This platform was created to honor leaders who are making positive impacts in society and are truly set apart and set aside from the rest. These leaders are given space to share their experiences and achievements in hopes to inspire others to make their own footprint on the world. It's HPP Treasure Talk, and here is your host, Shay.
It's HPP Treasure Talk.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. We are on episode 23. Praise God. I did not know we'd be out here this long. So this show just started as just a thing to promote my books, and it's kind of erupted. And so I'm super excited to have today Dr. Danielle Moss Cox. How are you today, ma'am?
I am so well. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. Your resume is wonderful. Like, I was reading your biography. I'm like, you have done so many amazing things. And so I want to dive into this. And I ask all of my guests the same question. If someone didn't know who you were or what you've ever done, all the amazing things that you've done, who would you say Dr. Danielle Moss Cox is?
Oh, that's such a great question. I am a wife, a mother, a friend. I'm God's child. And I'm someone who loves Black people completely, unapologetically, and wholly.
Amen to that. So, and I want to dive into that because I know that your advocacy is a lot about, you know, helping underserved populations, African Americans, and I think I was reading in your bio, the Latinx community as well. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's start with a little bit about you, maybe your hometown or whatever you want to share about like your family life. How, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I was born and mostly raised on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City. Um, I spent some time during my childhood in my mother's family's home of Barbados, West Indies.
Mm-hmm.
I am married. I have one biological child. I have adopted children and I have bonus children, so we are a blended family. And I'm also the primary caretaker for my mother. So so those are the highlights.
Okay. Now, so where did regarding your advocacy and working with the underserved population, is there a story behind that passion? Where did that fire come
Yeah,
from?
so I've got to give that to my parents. I lost my father at a young age, but he and my mother were definitely kind of engaged in Black liberation movements, in the 60s and early 70s. My first school was a Black nationalist daycare, I guess, if you want to call it,
Um,
or the Liberation School. And then when we had outgrown the Liberation School, a group of concerned parents came together, and my next school was Enuary Education Institute, which was also kind of like a Black nationalist elementary school. So I would say, that's probably where the trouble started. Um, and I think it's important to note that my perspective was shaped not by an anti-white perspective, but by a pro-Black perspective that really put Black people, Black history, Black literature, Black culture at the center of my education at a very early age. And so, and I just came from a family where I don't think people saw themselves as activists. They saw themselves as Black people who deserved to thrive in this country, in this society. And so to the extent that their pursuit of a thriving existence led them to opportunities to engage and be active, that's kind of where that came from.
Awesome. And then, so did this, when you created, and don't let, correct me if I'm wrong, Oliver Scholars is your nonprofit you created, correct?
No. Oliver Scholars was actually founded by a Jewish guy named John Hoffman about 40 years ago. This is our 40th anniversary. And I've been at the helm of this organization for 6 years.
Okay, well then let's get into that then. Okay, so because I know you've done a lot. I know reading your biography, you were the second CEO, the second Black woman CEO of the YWCA. You've done a lot of other amazing things. What prompted you to get involved with the Oliver Scholars?
Well, I think of all of the organizations that I have worked with and led. Oliver Scholars probably most closely mirrors my own educational trajectory. So I had an opportunity to attend an independent day school here in New York City, which led me to my undergraduate institution and really had a profound impact on, shaping my ideas around what it has meant to be a Black woman, what it's meant to be a Black woman operating within the confines of predominantly white institutions, and, what it means to thrive in those kinds of settings that weren't necessarily designed for us or by us. And so, Oliver Scholars identifies high potential Black and Latinx 7th graders across New York City and helps many of those students access independent day and boarding schools. But we are incredibly intentional about framing that experience in a way that fortifies our kids to get some clarity around who they are, what they bring to the table, what their leadership possibility and capacity is, and how to feel good about themselves in spaces that weren't necessarily designed for them.
And is there a reason it's just 7th graders? Is that a specific?
So we're prepping kids for high school.
Okay.
So that's really the only entry point.
Okay. And then what, give me some examples of ways you've seen the organization Oliver Scholars make a difference in the kids or make a difference in the community?
So many ways. We're built on 3 tenets: leadership, scholarship, and service. Service is a big part of how we approach this work, right? So we're not plucking people out of their communities because they're better than anyone else. To the extent that you get this opportunity, and it's a competitive process, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So how do you understand the circumstances of your own life, of your family's experience, of your community's experience, and what can you do to amplify the voices of those from your community who may not have the platforms or the access or the opportunities that you have? Oliver Scholars is really a multi-generational organization. It's actually having breakfast with one of our alum this morning, and we were reflecting on our recent gala when one of our alumni trustees talked about growing up in public housing in the Bronx, and eventually going off to Harvard and
Oh,
being
wow.
able to leverage that not just in his career in finance, but also always having the presence of mind to be thinking about how am I giving back? How am I making it better for those who come behind me? How am I partnering with those who have taken this journey with me so that we can move our community forward collectively? So I think that probably is one of the things that I love about the organization and that makes the organization so unique. And then just to see, right, where our alumni have ended up. Some folks have gone into finance. Many of them have gone into education, not just independent schools, but public education, higher education. Um, we have alumni working in nonprofit organizations, in city government, in federal government, in medicine, in law. Um, so I feel like we are this powerful um, cohort of change makers as a community. And I always say, I had no idea how many Oliver Scholars were already in my orbit before I took this job, right? So once I announced, people were like, hey, wait a minute, I'm an Oliver Scholar, so-and-so is an Oliver Scholar. And it's just the values alignment has been one of the things that excites me about the work.
And what is the name? Does the name mean something? Oliver, does that mean something specific?
Well, when our founder, John, started the organization, he was actually, I think, in advertising and pretty young. I think he was like 24 when he got this idea. He was actually coaching some kids in the Bronx in tennis and realized that they were really good, but unless they had access to a different kind of educational opportunity, they probably would not be able to continue to take tennis. So he reached out to his alma mater and said, I have a few kids that I think could really add something special to the life of the campus. And so that was kind of like the beginning. And then as the idea started to take shape, he was introduced to a school superintendent named Albert G. Oliver, who kind of supported him and assisted him in taking this from an idea to something, that was much more of an institution. And Albert G. Oliver was a Black educator, highly respected in the Department of Education here in New York City. And very early on, he passed away. And so John named the organization in his honor.
Okay. And so, I heard you say it's a competitive process. What is that? And you don't have to go into super, detail, but what does that look like for the kids to be able to gain entry into the program?
Yeah, so students have to live in the five boroughs, one of the five boroughs of New York City. They have to have a GPA of 90 or above with, I don't think anybody has a grade below a B.
Wow.
And they have to perform at a certain level on state exams. And then they have to be nominated. And so you can be nominated by your school, but you can also be nominated at your church. You can be nominated at your after-school program. We want to provide as many pathways for qualified families as possible. And so we get several hundred nominations every year, and we accept 75 of those students in the final rounds.
And then what does the benefits and advantages for the student look like for that program?
So the first part of the program, we call it the Scholar Immersion Program, or SIP. um, requires 6-week, uh, 2 summers of a 6-week academic and SEL program, social emotional program, and then a year of Saturday classes, right? And we're doing everything from test prep to interview preparation, because our school partners do require students to interview for admission. We're helping families with financial aid applications. We're working with students to get their writing up, to really develop them as learners. So what we see a lot of times is in their home schools and their community schools, right? The goal is to kind of like follow the rules and do what the adults are asking you. And so to make that transition successfully into independent school really requires our students to learn how to be their own advocates, right? You're going to be in a high school where, your teachers are going to have office hours, just like they would in college. You're going to have to, if you're at a boarding school, nobody's waking you up in the morning. You're going to have the discipline to get yourself to class on time. So really just helping them make that academic and basic social transition. But we also talk about race and culture and socioeconomic class and difference, right? Because, the average tuition at the boarding schools that we send our kids to is $80,000 a year. You may have many students who are paying that full freight. And so I think probably in some instances, it's the socioeconomic divide is much more shocking than the racial divide.
Right.
Because most of our students just have never encountered families that have the kind of resources and wealth that they're going to encounter once they're in independent school settings. And so that, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I wanted to, because I'm not familiar with, I guess I know what a boarding school is, but I don't really know what tell me more about it. So the kids are going off to a boarding school, doctor?
Yeah, so about 50% of our students go to boarding schools, mostly on the East Coast, but we do have some partners in the Midwest and in California. And they live on those campuses, right? They live in dorms. They attend classes away. For some of our families, the idea of getting their kids out of neighborhoods that may be experiencing some safety challenges is attractive.
Ideal. Right.
Some of our families really struggle with that idea of sending a 14-year-old away to kind of live on their own. I would say by and large, the parents who give themselves permission to be brave around those decisions don't really express any kinds of regrets. I tell this story of when we do the 6-week summer program, we spend a week of that away at a boarding school because we want our kids to have some kind of like level of exposure. But we also bring our parents along to visit the boarding school because they also haven't had a lot of exposure. And a couple of years ago, we're pulling onto the campus of our partner boarding school, and one of the parents says, so I'm confused, which building is the school?
Right.
And it's like, ma'am, every building you see is the high school.
It's right. It's all over.
A dedicated stadium just for hockey, right?
Wow.
You don't play basketball in the same gym that you might play other sports. There is a building just for theater, right?
Wow.
There's a science building. There's a ELA, English language arts building. And so I think for a lot of our students and families, like you don't know what you haven't had access to until you encounter what you haven't had access to.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, it can be a big transition. But once our kids are in high school, Every student is assigned a scholar counselor, who is the person who's going to visit them on their campus, who's going to talk to the adults that interact with them on their campus, whether it's a day school or a boarding school. We want to know, how are these young people adjusting? We also want to make sure that the schools have a sense of accountability for managing, let's call them hiccups, that our students will encounter, right? So I want these young people to be treated like my own children, and I want them to be emotionally safe in these spaces. And I want them to feel supported and feel like they have access and opportunity. And I also, we're really clear with our kids, right? They're not just doing you a favor with the financial aid, right? Because it's incredibly generous. You are bringing something special and unique to their campus as well. You know, I like to say you can't offer a world-class education if your student body is completely homogeneous, right? Because the world, right, we are actually in the global majority, right? And so if those students are going to be prepared, they need to figure out how to build relationships with us and listen to us and be partnered with us, and, you know, in all the ways that matter.
Okay, so this is kind of coming in perspective. I don't know what I thought at first. Okay, so you have really smart kids. They all apply, like super
They're
smart
all
kids.
black
They
and
apply.
brown. Let me just say
They're
that,
right.
right?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So let me just pause you. Yes, they're black and brown, and they apply for this program. 70. You said 70, 75 get in. Is it a yearly?
Mm-hmm.
Each year you go through this process, and then they kind of prepare. They prep and do those weekends and the Saturdays, and then after that they get shipped off to different boarding schools. And for how long?
So that's their high school.
Oh, that's the whole.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean,
That. Oh wow.
they come home for the summer and breaks and that kind of thing. But yeah, they go to high school on their campuses. So, you know, I will say again, right, 50% of the kids do opt for boarding schools, maybe closer to 60%. The other students largely attend private schools here in New York City.
Okay. Okay. Wow, that's amazing. And so I know you said that the tuition is high, but you said they're fairly generous as far as financial aid. So there is definitely the ability to allow these kids to go financially to this through this program, obviously, if they get accepted.
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Wow, well, that's amazing. So where are any, I don't know if there's many, but where are the boarding schools at? Are they within New York or are they out of state?
Do we have? I don't know if we have as many schools. We have schools in New Jersey.
Okay.
We have schools in Massachusetts and Connecticut, in Pennsylvania, California. There's a school in Ohio. Um, you know, the kids could end up, you know, based on their preferences, their learning styles. You know, the team that works on the admissions process really knows the schools and has deep relationships with those schools and can really help families to be matched with institutions where they're going to thrive, not just academically, but socially. We think that's important as well. Some could be at a single sex school. You know, one young lady who's now at Columbia University went to a boarding school in California that was an equestrian boarding school, right?
What's that for? What's that for?
Horseback riding.
The horses. And I was going to say that, but I didn't want to sound silly. And I'd be like, is it horses? Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yenny spoke at our gala and she was like, let me tell y'all, like, I'm from Washington Heights.
That's good.
So
no, but imagine that her
like,
experience
I'm not,
changed.
you know, she was like, I'm not even sure if I've been that close to a horse before I got there. Right.
That's great.
But just to have those experiences, you know, in terms of like even the sports that are offered, right? You could join a golf team. You could join a lacrosse is another big one.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
All the things that, you know, for a host of reasons, right, they would not have access to if they stayed at their
somewhere.
public schools. Right. Yeah. So, you know, we encourage them to be curious, try it. If you like it, keep, if not, try the next thing. Um, if there's a club that you think, you could benefit from and it doesn't exist, start it. So we've had a lot of students start, uh, Black clubs and Latinx clubs on their campus to just build community and support, and to uplift their cultural identities and experiences in ways that benefit, the entire school population. So it's a really special organization, and I'm pleased to be here.
Yes, yes. And I was going to say, and this is probably a silly question, what was the buy-in of the community and the world around, which I like seeing your interview and he was like on the news or something regarding it. And so obviously there's a lot of buy-in for this. It seems like you're doing amazing work. What is your specific role in the organization?
So I'm the CEO.
Oh, yes. Come on now. Okay. So
So
it's like I'm up top. Okay. No.
if it's good, they blame me. If it ain't working, they blame me too. So yeah, I'm the
Right. Yep.
CEO.
There you go. I know that's the part about leadership I had to learn real fast. Yeah, you're
Yes.
liable for it all, the good and the
Hmm.
bad. Okay, and so we're almost at time here. So I want to kind of finish up with tell me what are your greatest personal and professional achievements?
Hmm. Well, I think my family is my greatest achievement. Um, I would say, professionally, I don't know. It's, it could be anything, right?
I know.
Probably I would say, I'm really proud of my TED Talk. Um,
Yes.
I was terrified that my mother was going to be the only one to watch it, her and my aunt. And, well over 2 million views at this point. Um, so that came at a pivotal time in my career where I was kind of like rethinking what my purpose was, and then this opportunity that I actually had not been looking for opened up for me, um,
Wow.
and has changed the game for me in many ways. So that's something that I was really proud of. But I think all of the organizations that I've worked with, that have put me in close proximity to community, um, really kind of helped me to affirm my own humanity through my service, right? What makes a life meaningful, right?
Yeah.
It's not what you did for yourself, right? We're defined often by, what we gave and how we made people feel as a result of our presence. Um, and so, I think I have steered somewhat away from like big systems work, because I so enjoy, those moments when a student stops by your office, or you're walking down the street and a young person, who may not be as young as they were when you knew them, stops you to say, I remember you, and you had some impact on me and my journey. So those are the things that keep me kind of like grounded and working in this space.
That's wonderful. And I wanted to go back to the TED Talk. I know we almost out of time, but how was it? Because when I seen on your bio that you was a TED Talk, I was like, oh yes, she did it. Because that's been that's a huge accomplishment to do that. And so I know that was a few years back, but if you could talk really about were you nervous? I heard you say that it kind of dropped in your lap. So was it something that you were prepared for? And we can be real brief on it, so we can stick to time though.
Yeah. So no, I wasn't prepared. I thought that you had to kind of like apply for TED, and I don't know, maybe other people do it that way. I participated in a study. I was quoted in a book, not even using my real name, and the author of the book, um, you know, uh, attributed my comments to me. And so they have a curation team that kind of scours the earth for new ideas, and they did their due diligence. So by the time they reached out to me to say, hey, you want to do a TED Talk? And I was like, do I have to apply? What do I have to do?
Right.
Um, they were like, no, all you have to do is say yes. So I shared that because I think it's important for people to understand that you're always building your brand and somebody's always watching. right. So show up fully, and move with integrity and kindness and a love for service, and the right people will find their way to you.